You probably didn't expect them to betray you. That's the part that makes it heavy. It wasn't some random person. It was someone you were comfortable with. Someone you didn't feel the need to question, and now you're sitting there thinking about it more than you want to admit. You go over small details. You replay conversations in your head. You try to figure out when things started feeling off. At first, you might even defend them in your own head. Maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe it's not that serious. Maybe I misunderstood. But deep down, something doesn't sit right. You start noticing the little things you brushed off before. The way they said something that didn't match what they did. The way their tone felt off, but you ignored it. And once that feeling settles in, it doesn't really leave. The strange thing about betrayal isn't just what they did. It's what you believed before they did it. You trusted them. You felt safe. You didn't feel the need to protect yourself. That's why it hits so hard. Most people expect a reaction. They expect anger. They expect long messages, arguments, emotion. They expect noise. What they don't expect is quiet. Sometimes you don't explode. You just step back. You stop sharing as much. You stop explaining yourself. You stop trying to smooth everything over. And that shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Once you pull your energy back, the whole dynamic feels different. You start noticing things you ignored before. Little inconsistencies appear. Small lies stand out. Moments where you made excuses for them become clear. It becomes obvious in a way it wasn't before. You realize it wasn't just one mistake. It was a pattern. Maybe you saw parts of it earlier, but you didn't want to accept it. Now you can't ignore it. That's what they didn't think about. They assumed you would react and then go back to normal. But sometimes betrayal doesn't make you louder. It makes you more careful. You don't argue as much. You don't over-explain. You don't chase. You adjust. Adjusting quietly makes people uncomfortable. They can't predict it. Anger is easy to respond to. Calm distance isn't. They might try to act like everything is fine. They change the subject. They make jokes. They minimize what happened. But you feel the difference. Even if you stay polite, something inside you has shifted. Trust doesn't just reset. Even if you forgive them, it's not the same. There's a pause now before you open up. You think twice before sharing certain things. That hesitation is new. It's there for a reason. You start noticing patterns you ignored before. You remember moments that didn't sit right at the time. You realize you were giving more than they were. You realize they were taking more than they admitted. And that's uncomfortable but necessary. Another thing they didn't expect is that you wouldn't fall apart. Sometimes people assume that if they hurt you, you'll need them more. But often it does the opposite. You get quieter. You become more focused. You get more selective with your time. You stop giving people the benefit of the doubt so easily. You start asking yourself different questions. Why did I ignore that feeling? Why did I accept that behavior? What am I willing to tolerate moving forward? Those questions slowly change you. Not in a dramatic way, in a steady way. You become less available for things that drain you. You become less willing to overgive. You become less interested in proving your loyalty. You stop trying to fix what isn't yours to fix. And that can feel uncomfortable for someone who benefited from the old version of you. The old version overlooked more. The new version notices more. You don't need revenge. You don't need to embarrass them. You don't even need a big final conversation. Sometimes distance is enough. Distance gives perspective. Perspective shows you how much you were carrying. Maybe you were the one keeping things stable, the one giving extra chances, the one smoothing things over. Once you stop doing that, it becomes obvious. Conversations feel different. Access feels limited. Your energy isn't automatic anymore. You're not being cold. You're being careful. Careful people don't get betrayed the same way twice. Betrayal has a strange way of forcing growth, not the loud, inspirational kind. The practical kind. You learn to trust your instincts. You learn that comfort doesn't always mean loyalty. You learn that respect should be consistent, not occasional. Once you understand that, you don't go back. That's what they didn't expect. They didn't expect you to change quietly. They didn't expect you to step back without drama. They didn't expect you to be okay without chasing them. When someone betrays you, they usually assume they still have access. They assume you'll calm down. They assume things will settle. But sometimes they don't settle. Sometimes they shift permanently. Not with a scene, with small, quiet decisions. You choose who gets your time. You choose who hears your thoughts. You choose who has access to your trust. Once that access changes, it doesn't fully return. That's the real consequence. Not your anger, but losing the version of you that trusted without hesitation. Once that version is gone, it doesn't come back, and now you move differently. You act differently. You protect yourself differently, and that is something they never expected. Now that you've experienced this, you see things differently. You notice who really deserves your energy. You notice who is consistent and who only takes You stop worrying about people who never appreciated you. You stop trying to convince them of your worth. You stop seeking approval from those who betrayed you. You start valuing your own time more than ever. You start protecting your mental space. You start understanding that saying no is a form of strength. You realize that boundaries are not mean, they are necessary. You realize that your calm is more powerful than anger. You notice how peace feels heavier than drama. You begin to invest in relationships that are mutual. You begin to let go of those that drain you. You stop apologizing for being cautious. You stop over-explaining yourself to people who don't care. You understand that growth is quiet but visible. You notice small changes in how people treat you. You notice who truly respects your time and attention. You realize that patience becomes your ally. You realize that observation is a weapon no one sees coming. You stop expecting betrayal from everyone, but you don't ignore warning signs either. You trust your instincts more than ever. You choose your circle carefully. You choose depth over quantity. You focus on people who match your energy. You stop wasting energy on people who never cared. You realize forgiveness is for you, not for them. You understand that distance is sometimes the kindest form of love. You understand that letting go is not weakness. You notice how silence speaks louder than words. You realize that moving forward doesn't require them to change. You realize that your peace is now in your hands. You notice the power in being selective with your attention. You understand that betrayal taught you self-respect. You understand that betrayal taught you clarity. You understand that betrayal taught you patience. You understand that betrayal taught you who you truly are, and now you move through the world differently. Calmer, wiser, stronger. You act with intention. You protect your energy, and that is something they never expected. You realize that life will always test you. You realize that not everyone has good intentions. You understand that people will disappoint, but that doesn't mean you lose yourself. You understand that growth often comes from pain. You notice how resilient you've become. You see how much stronger you are than before. You see how clear your boundaries have become. You understand that calmness is a form of power. You understand that patience is a form of control. You notice the difference between people who drain you and those who energize you. You choose to spend your time wisely. You choose to protect your peace. You understand that self-respect is non-negotiable. You understand that your energy is sacred. You realize that you no longer need to prove yourself to anyone. You notice that silence can teach more than words. You notice that observation can save you from repeated mistakes. You understand that trusting yourself is more important than trusting others blindly. You realize that every betrayal has made you wiser. You realize that every challenge has made you stronger. You understand that every difficult experience was a lesson in disguise. You notice how much more selective you are with your attention. You notice how much more deliberate your choices have become. You understand that walking away is sometimes the kindest decision. You understand that letting go doesn't mean giving up. You notice that your intuition is sharper than ever. You realize that your energy is now fully under your control. You understand that your calm will speak louder than any argument. You understand that your peace is more valuable than approval. You notice how your self-awareness protects you. You realize that you don't have to explain yourself to anyone. You understand that boundaries are a form of love for yourself and others. You notice how empowering it feels to value yourself first. You realize that you are no longer the person who trusted without caution. You understand that growth is a lifelong process. You notice how far you've come. You realize that you can move through life with strength and clarity. You understand that betrayal can be a teacher, not a punishment. You notice that calm confidence replaces the chaos you once felt. You realize that you are in control of your life. You understand that peace and strength coexist. You notice that you are finally free from the weight of others' actions. And that freedom is something they never expected.